Coming to you from deep within the swamps of the southeastern United States, this is a paranormal podcast unlike one you've ever experienced before. This is the Westgate Paranormal Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Paranormal Podcast. This is Eric Desad.
And Amanda.
And today is Wednesday, August 29th, 2018. And we are back after a week's vacation, so to speak.
I wouldn't necessarily call it that.
Yeah, not really. Schedules, we both been kind of ill. I got ill, and then my wife got ill, and, well, here we are now, once more.
But we're still alive.
We are still alive, so...
This isn't a haunted podcast.
Nope, not with us anyway.
Not yet.
If anybody hears any EVPs during this podcast, though, please be sure to let us know. I'm always interested in that. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of an open thing again tonight on our podcast, but it's going to be a little bit more directed, I guess you can say. We're going to speak on the topic of aliens, and this is going to be sort of a fairly loose topic. What? Why are you laughing at me?
You know how I feel about this.
Yes. This is going to be kind of a loose topic, meaning that, you know, it's going to be just from our own perspectives and research and that sort of thing. Strangely enough, or maybe not strangely enough, depending on who you are and who you ask and who you talk to, aliens do actually play a part within the paranormal world, as do cryptids, such as cryptozoology, Bigfoot, that sort of thing. It's not always just about spirits or ghosts, hauntings. Paranormal really is a very large sort of catch-all term when it comes to the unexplained.
And I had no idea about that because the first time I kind of put those two together was maybe a couple months ago because it was something we were watching on TV. It was some type of paranormal thing, and then they got into like an episode of UFOs.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And then they went into Bigfoot, and I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah.
So...
But who's laughing now?
Yeah. Now we're doing one.
Yeah. So just I'm not gonna brag here. I was a field investigator for MUFON for a time being in the past.
Right.
MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, and being a field investigator means that the region that I lived in, anybody who reported UFO sightings or anything UFO related would be sent to whatever district those field investigators happen to live in, for a locality.
Right. Whoever's closer gets the case.
Right, basically. And so they also have, a specialized team that actually goes and travels all over the world to investigate like actual on-site evidence or reports if there's, say, somebody who has returned claiming to have been abducted, that have been missing, or if there was an actual craft that was found. There are people who will go there and try to secure the scene and stuff like that. I was not part of that scene. I was just a field investigator, meaning any reports I had to follow up on. I had to interview the people. I had to look at photographic evidence and all that sort of things, and I would make reports that would go to the state director and be filtered through on up to National MUFON. So I do have a little bit, I guess you could say, from that as far as the experience of working within the UFO community. But we're going to keep this kind of light. We're going to try not to be too technical with it.
Because I can't.
Well, I'm sure you could. I think people know more about sort of the society's ideas of aliens more so than most people give them credit for.
Right. So I think my big thing of where you completely lose me on aliens are perfect example right now. If you're bored and you want a really, really good laugh, there is a documentary on Netflix called Unacknowledged, I think. We just
No,
watched
that
it.
was actually Unacknowledged was actually about the military and the government's role. You're thinking of the other one, which is a first-hand example of the guy who has the most documented encounters
Right.
of anyone else.
I cannot think of what the name of it is.
I
then.
can't either, honestly.
Anyway, if you guys follow us on Facebook, I will figure it out and I will put it up there if you're interested in looking at it.
Yeah.
I could not stop fucking laughing at that thing.
The cover art for it is literally on Netflix. It looks like 3 line drawings of grays, I believe.
Yeah.
Aliens, kind of,
Something
side
like
by
that.
side. Yeah.
But that when I think aliens and alien abductions and people talking about aliens, that guy was the perfect example of what I consider an alien fanatic. Like, y'all have to watch it. That's all I have to say. It is so fake. And they are trying to push this as being something real. And I can't. I'll let you talk about your whole side of it, but...
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, there were a lot of things that were in the video of what I watched of it. I didn't actually make it through the whole thing. I
yeah,
have
actually,
to
we
confess.
both did fall asleep.
Once they got to the point of him, casually holding his video recorder and, oh my God, there's a gray looking at my window, and it's peeking around the corner and disappearing, and then peeking around the corner. That sort of thing, that's when you really lose me, because... that's really far-fetched. People have encounters, but it doesn't usually just happen because, oh my God, I've got my video camera and there happens to be a gray looking in my window over and over and over again throughout your life.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'm very skeptical.
I am absolutely, positively intrigued with crop circles, though. I find them, not only do I find them beautiful, but I find them interesting, how they're made and how they're so concentric. Everything is absolutely perfect down to the last
Very
detail.
mathematical. And some of them have outright proven to be hoaxes. People that have hoaxed them have come forward and said, we did this. But then there's still a lot of unexplained ones.
Right.
So, I think they're awesome. They're works of art in themselves. They're very mathematical. They're very precise.
Yeah.
And who knows? That's that whole paranormal catch there. That who knows? Really?
Yeah. No, I agree.
I don't.
All right, so let's start this off from kind of the beginning. Let's talk about cave drawings,
right,
where you are completely in belief. You believe that there is no way on God's green earth that anybody could have just come up with that shit on their own. Where I go, people draw unicorns out of nowhere.
Yes.
So, I think that people have always had an imagination. And if we don't have imaginations, we don't get new creations. It's
I
kind
agree.
of,
I agree.
So, give your opinion on
ancient drawings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My opinions, I think it crosses boundaries throughout the world. It's cultural. Anywhere in the world where petroglyphs have been found, pretty much, that there are unexplained drawings that do have similarities with one another as far as some of the figures they depict. And modern science and archaeology really can't explain it, other than maybe it is an artistic thing. But it's also, I think it ties in a similar way to our ancient architecture that still exists in the world, such as pyramids.
Right.
They're very similar. We have earthworks here in North America from the Native Americans. We obviously have, the most well-known, the pyramids that are in Egypt, and the ones in Central and South America, Mexico, things like that. I was
going to say the Mayan and the Aztec, all of that stuff is just unbelievably gorgeous, and I can't figure out how something like that would be built without the help of something.
Right, and we still, there's structures that exist that we really do not know how they were made so precise not just the pyramids, but, other structures in Central and South America, especially, that we would have a hard time really recreating with our own tools nowadays. Even the precision cuts and the way that the things are aligned and all that, and the mathematical formulas behind some of it. Yes, it's very easy for an ancient culture to figure out how to do something. I believe in sort of the Buddhist concept of the idea that life on this planet goes far back, or excuse me, goes back much further than we can really fathom. That it's kind of cyclic. The Dalai Lama once made a comment talking about the ideas of like Buddhism and Christian origins and the ideas of creation tales, I guess you could say, within religions, and how it all ties into science. Somebody asked him if he believed in the Big Bang Theory, and he's like, of course I believe in the Big Bang Theory. The only thing I don't believe is that there was only one Big Bang. It happens over and over and over, because the whole idea within Buddhism is that time is infinite. There is no beginning, there is no end. It's just something that always exists. The universe always exists. Maybe it's an expansion and a retraction where it keeps destroying and recreating itself.
Right.
There's no idea behind like this idea of a God that's doing it outside of, the actual existence. It's just a natural phenomena that's energy cannot
like
be
tides.
created or destroyed. What?
The ebb and flow of tides.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just something that it always goes on. So we go into the idea that, these ancient cultures that we really know very little, if anything, about, just because we have science that can explain what we can observe with our current technology and understanding of physics and stuff like that. But that's what science is for. We use science to understand with the methods we have at hand to understand those things. There are still things beyond science that we don't know yet, just because we don't have the ability to test them out.
Yeah.
So these ancient cultures, a lot of them, the Acropolis is a good idea in Greece, or a good example in Greece, that, if you look back at some of the ancient philosophers and stuff and the history, the Acropolis itself, the ancient Greeks believed at that time that it was ancient to them even. And that's why it was such a special place, and how some of the rocks got up on this giant hill. So I think that has a whole lot to do with things like pyramids, that we don't know, really, we don't, how much these ancient cultures really, how advanced they could have been, and how well traveled between different cultures, different continents they could have been. So they could have shared ideas, and we really don't have a clue about that.
Now, am I going crazy, or did they actually find pyramid-like structures under the water too? Haven't they actually found?
I believe that they have found something that was similar to that in the Gulf of Mexico, was one of the places.
Okay.
It's part of the giant ring of the crater.
Yeah.
That extends into under the Gulf of Mexico. And there's also the sunken city off the coast of Japan that they're not really sure about, that looks like actual buildings, like right angle things are created that way, but it has since sunk below off the coast of Japan. And even, that's a fairly recent discovery too. We're still finding lots of things that we don't really even know about underwater. And, our tectonic plates and all that stuff shift and move the Earth's crust around, and has been for millennia, So
in my head, I am more likely to believe in underwater aliens than I am to believe in space aliens, because all right, I'll explain myself. So our own ocean, we have barely even explored it in however thousands of years we have been on this planet. We have explored like such a minute amount of ocean.
Right.
So, and also whenever there's UFO sightings, the majority of them are over the water.
Right. And there's been reports of them coming in and out, like up and like in and out of the ocean itself.
Right. So that's where I can kind of get on board. Like, I may actually put a foot in the car, but it's just gonna be a foot.
But that's the thing, though. The UFOs that are under the water, do they originate on this planet, or have they come? Are they actually extraterrestrial and they've set up under the water and we're just seeing them coming and going?
I mean, if you really want my opinion, it's Cthulhu.
Well,
I mean, that's where I would go with it. Like, I would believe in that. Then, I don't know. Obviously, I am a huge skeptic, and it would take... See, I don't know how much of a skeptic I am, because I was about to go, I would have to be abducted for me to believe it, but me saying that scares the shit out of me.
But then also, if you were abducted, there's a high possibility you would not even know that you've been abducted. You know what I mean?
I'm almost positive I would know if somebody stuck something up my butt. I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm just saying.
But they're beyond the...
Are they, though?
What the hell is that from? We're beyond the limits of what rectal probing can show us now.
Are
we? The
Simpsons
or something like that?
I don't know. All I think is Cartman from South Park that
with
first season.
that giant satellite.
Yes, that's always the first thing I think of.
So, I don't know. So, I'm a skeptic and a believer at the same time. I'm a skeptic in that I have not yet seen proof face-to-face like I would like to see in order to completely believe. Yes, of course, I've seen things that I cannot understand in the night sky.
And I have as well.
But that does not necessarily mean that they're aliens. Just because I don't know what it is does not mean it's an alien. But I have also seen, when I was a kid and I lived up in the Midwest in Indiana, in the fields, I have seen burnt circles. Like, not circles that are hollow, but like actual full-on charred ground.
Like where something landed.
Like, yeah, like it looks like it was not man-made.
Sure.
And it actually happened near the cemetery that was in the field next to where I used to live.
Well, it's ghost aliens.
But I remember one time going out there, and it was obviously the field had already been harvested, and all the corn stalks and everything were basically pretty much gone, but they hadn't been tilled under yet. And I had gone out there, and there were these, I want to say they're probably 12 foot in diameter. There were several large black circles burnt into the ground. Like, not just the corn husk, but like burnt into the ground.
Right.
And they were too perfect and too symmetrical for somebody basically just to sometime in the middle of the night go out and burn these giant circles. So I never knew what they were.
Right.
And I never knew of any farmers going out and doing things like this in their field that, you know.
Right. Random 12-foot spots of burned, scorched earth, basically.
That's exactly what it was. And so I don't know. And the one life-changing thing that really did happen to me happened when I lived in California. When I lived on base on Fort Ord before it was decommissioned. Excuse me, you know, as a kid, I was really terrified of the dark because of the things I would see and all that. You know, if you listen to our previous podcast, you know me personally, you know some of these stories. But one day, while I was asleep, I woke up in my bedroom, and I remember for some reason, I told myself I have to remember what time it was, because I woke up and my whole room was filled with light. The shades on my window were up, so I could see out the window, and the light was actually coming into my room through the window. But the only thing I could see outside the window was fog, but it wasn't a normal fog like we would get in Monterey as the fog came in off the bay. It literally looked like a fog machine, because it was all swirly, like it was moving fog, like turbulent. It wasn't just a wall of white. And that's all I could see out the window, was this swirling fog mass with this bright light coming in my bedroom. And I told myself I have to remember what time it is. And it was 12:12 a.m., like to the dot. And for some reason, I felt like I was just frozen in my bed. Not like sleep paralysis, like I could move, but I felt like I shouldn't because I did not feel like I was alone. And at first, I was terrified because it woke me up. This light literally woke me up from a dead sleep. And I looked at the clock and then looked out the window and saw all this. And then I was just fine. It was like I wasn't afraid at all. And I covered my face up, and like that's all I remember going back to sleep. And from that point on, literally, that is the one moment in time in my life that after that moment, I was never afraid of the dark again. It was just like something changed. And I remember my neighbor friend, his name was Zach. I told his mom about it, and she just laughed at me. She's like, "You were dreaming. That didn't happen."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, something happened. I don't know what it was. If it was like a spiritual awakening, if you want to call it that, if
Right.
it was like a waking dream of some sort." Even though I know for a fact that I did wake up and experience this, but I don't remember falling back asleep. I just remember waking up the next morning. My shade was still up, but I was fine. And I was like, what the hell happened last night?
Right.
And I can remember it like it just happened 5 minutes ago. It was the weirdest thing.
See, and I have one just like that, but you think that I was abducted every time I say this story. But, like, I was young, I don't know, and I still remember this. So even if it was a dream, it's so weird to me to remember a dream from when I was, like, 6. Like, that doesn't happen.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So I remember I was young, 5, 6, 7, right around that age, and I was in bed. I had already been asleep, and I remember opening my eyes, and my bedroom was actually green. Like, it was a green light.
Right.
My bedroom growing up was like a baby blue color.
Yeah.
But I remember when I woke up, it wasn't like an intense light. It's kind of like a filtered green light. Soft.
Like a party light or
Like
a
a party-
gel light
yes,
for
just-
photography?
Yes, just like a party light. And I remember when I woke up, there was this shape coming towards my bed. It was in like a black cloak and a gas mask.
Yeah.
And it was all, everything about it was all black. And I remember I wasn't scared, but I knew I didn't want to look at it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I quickly threw the covers over my head, and the next thing I knew, it was morning.
So sort of that same similar thing.
And that-
you don't remember
yeah.
going to sleep. You
No,
you have
I-
lost time.
Exactly. It was the minute it happened, and I threw and I remember physically feeling me throw the covers over my face. It's not like a dream where you just do it, you know. It was sheets over my head, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. And I remember telling my mom about this. I don't think I ever told my dad, but I told my mom, and my mom was actually concerned. It wasn't one of those, like, where your friend's mom laughed at you.
Yeah.
My mom was actually kind of worried about it, but we never really discussed it ever again after that point. But I remember probably when I was like 18 or 19 years old, I did bring it up again, and my mom told me again that that had made her very uncomfortable, but she never said why it made her uncomfortable.
Had she ever told you that she ever had
No.
any encounter? Like, okay.
Nope. No, I mean, really, like, and you know, my mom and I talk about everything.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing that we have never really sat down and had a conversation about. But I remember how I felt. I remember exactly what it looked like. And anytime I see, like, artwork with people in gas masks,
Yeah.
it really bothers me.
Yep.
Like, it unnerves me. But it doesn't scare me. It makes me very uncomfortable.
And the reason when you tell me that and I say, well, you were probably abducted, is because there have been other stories where people have said similar things.
See, and I've never even I don't share this, and why I'm sharing it on a podcast is beyond me. But I've never heard of anybody else having. I've never read any other stories about it. Like I said, I
Yeah.
don't share this, but I've also never read or encountered or heard of anybody else having a similar situation.
Right.
So, hey, if anybody out there has, let me know, because I feel like it's just some crazy thing that I remember from when I was a kid. And if somebody else has had a similar situation, I would actually love to know.
Yeah, I think the ones that really stick out of my mind, and I want to say it was when I was listening to Coast AM, and I really want to say it was an episode about Skinwalker Ranch.
See, that's the only comparison that I could give to it, is the Skinwalker Ranch, and I only figured that out after you talked to me about it. So,
well, the story that I remember was that somebody had experienced, and it wasn't just one person; it was several people that had experienced the same exact thing, involving them waking up and seeing someone either like standing across their bedroom, like against a wall, or in the corner of their room. And at first they thought it was a shadow person, but it sort of stepped out of it, the shadow, so to speak, even though they were all dark. Yeah. Even though they were all dark, but they were like cloaked and wearing a gas mask. And these people, when they saw it, were afraid of it. But at some point during this confrontation, what they were seeing actually stepped back and just disappeared into the wall. Like, walked through the wall and out of their room.
see, this one came towards me and was, by the time that I took the sheets over my head, it was like at the foot of my bed.
Yeah.
And that's why I went, oh shit, and like covered myself. But it was not, it wasn't a similar situation like that. This actually, from the corner to my bed,
it came right towards you.
Yes,
too,
it was not afraid of me, and it knew that I was looking at it.
And my grandma used to say the same sort of things, but it was usually someone standing, because the hallway came to the door of her bedroom, and the foot of her bed, like when you were in her bedroom, like the foot of her bed faced the doorway going out of the bedroom. So you could, as you were laying there, you could see into the hallway at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
And she would tell me about either waking up in the middle of the night sometimes, or as she was going to sleep, she would see someone standing in the hallway. And it was just a dark figure, like looking into her bedroom, and it would terrify her. And her whole thing, and sometimes she would wake up. I remember one scared the hell out of me, because she said she was asleep and something woke her up in her sleep, because she had her eyes closed, but there was a bright light in the room, so she could see the light shining through her eyelids. And she sort of like opened her eyes for a second and realized there was somebody standing at the foot of her bed, and there was this bright light in her bedroom. So she knew she had to close her eyes again and pretend to be asleep.
Right.
Because she always said that anytime she saw these things, it terrified her so much that if it knew that she knew it was there, it was going to kill her.
Wow.
So she had to pretend to be asleep. So she would just lay... it's hard for me to talk about. She would lay completely still.
Right.
And pretend to still be asleep because she feared for her life so much, for whatever it was. And she lived out in the middle of nowhere, and there was never like a person that was there. But she didn't say one way or the other what she thought it was. She just said that there was something standing at the foot of her bed, or something standing in the hallway looking at her bedroom.
Well, how many times have I woken you up?
Yeah, screaming. Yeah, because it's that whole corner of the room thing.
Every time. And it's always by the bedroom door, from the hallway coming into the bedroom.
Yeah.
It's never another corner. It is always that corner right there by the bedroom door.
Yeah.
So.
Make of it what you will.
Right.
I mean, these are personal experiences we're talking about.
And they're unnerving, and they're hard to talk about, because
they really are.
You don't understand them.
And you question, your own
sanity.
Like, are you dreaming? What is this happening? Because I've never suffered from sleep paralysis. When I was younger, I had, a few number of times growing up where what they call what could be kind of like sleep paralysis or like the Hag Syndrome. It usually only happened when I was really young, where I would wake up and feel like something was there near me. I never saw anything, but I felt like something was near me, and I was completely paralyzed. And I couldn't scream, and I would try and try and try to scream, but I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't scream. And I would tell myself, if you can just move one part of your body, everything else will be okay.
Right.
And then you come out of it. And it was usually like me trying to wiggle my finger or wiggle my toe or something. And once I could push myself to do that, I wake up and it's fine. So that's sort of like a sleep paralysis, but I never saw anything. I just felt a presence.
Right. And I since I've been an adult, I haven't had it, but up until I was out of that house,
Yeah.
I had it. It didn't happen like every night, but once every few years it would happen where I would wake up and I could not move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't anything. I was completely, totally frozen. And that is the most horrifying feeling. If you have never encountered sleep paralysis, you can't even take in a breath of air.
Right, exactly.
It's so scary.
And where that kind of ties in with the old description of what they call the Hag Syndrome. It's basically the same thing, but people who experience the Hag Syndrome, they actually usually wake up and they see something hovering over them or sitting on their chest or holding them down.
Right,
or something
that
like
I've never had.
Right,
yeah.
and I've never had that either. It's the same sort of feeling, but without actually physically seeing the presence of something. I would feel something, like something was there, and something had done something to me and paralyzed me. And when I was waking up and realizing that I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I could barely even like move my eyes, that it was something out of my control that put me there. Like you're coming out of being anesthetized, but you're coming out fast. It's not like that groggy feeling. It's like, boom, you wake up and like you're suddenly, you can't do anything.
It's like someone injected you with adrenaline.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, those are experiences, but and that's another thing too. It's like that's something that has been experienced by a lot of people.
Right.
In a lot of different cultures, in a lot of different ways, a lot of different belief systems. It is something that's shared. And we have, within science, within different belief systems, we have a lot of theories, but nobody really knows. Even doctors are hard-pressed to describe what causes even actual clinical cases of sleep paralysis.
Right.
No, because what could be affecting one person causing sleep paralysis may be completely absent from another person that's experiencing the same thing. So it's not something physiologically wrong with them. They don't really know.
Right. See, if I had sleep paralysis now as an adult, I would probably contribute it to like stressors and things like that. But when you're a kid,
right,
and it happens, you don't have a whole lot of stress. You
yeah,
know?
Exactly. And on the times that it did happen to me, when after it would happen, I would go back and think there's nothing that would have triggered that for me. There's no reason, any sort of stressor that would have put me in that. It would have just been a normal day, the day before, the week before, whatever.
Right.
Just you wake up and boom, you can't move. You're terrified. You feel like you're sort of between life and death, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's a horrifying experience.
Absolutely. So getting back on what, just for people who don't know much about skinwalkers or aliens, do people think that those two are the same thing? I know that skinwalkers comes from a Native American, a Native American type
Right.
storyline or legend or, what have you.
Yeah, and depending upon, I guess you can say tribal, or even within different indigenous groups, whether they be North American Indians or South American or something like that, they all have their own sort of different versions. And a lot of them think, yes, they're aliens, and they're taking on different forms. Some of them believe that they are actually shapeshifters.
Okay.
Basically, it's sort of a generic way to describe it, I guess, is something that is able to take on the shape of something else. And a lot of people believe that even within the idea of aliens, that they do that too. The X-Files played on that really well. For anybody who saw X-Files, the old series, that there was the idea of clones, first of all. There was the idea of actual aliens being here, presenting themselves as humans and walking among us, and you could be next to one and not even know it.
Right.
Some people refer to that as like there's a couple different ways of looking at it, even with this definition, but what they call walk-ins or drop-ins, that it's almost like a possession, except that a person can be a host to an alien entity and take over their body, whereas some people believe that the alien themselves can actually transform themselves to such a degree that they look just like a regular person. So a lot of it comes from the idea of shape-shifting, though, within Native Americans.
Right.
And that can encompass a whole lot of different things.
Which we can cover on another subject. I just wanted, because we did touch base on it, I just kind of wanted to clarify for some people who have never heard of Skinwalkers or, have but don't have a whole lot of knowledge about them.
Exactly. And a lot of it, too, they called them the big-headed people. Or the big heads. That was a big thing, with the idea that, especially in a lot of the Native American groups in the Midwest, that they believed that there were certain people within their tribes that would, as they died, their whole purpose was to guard the lands, the native lands that they held. So they would stay there after death and basically become sort of this spirit guardian. And when that land was threatened or people were there that they didn't want to be there or something, that they would actually appear to these people as big-headed creatures, sort of like what we think of when we think of like a gray alien.
Right.
And that also plays into the idea of shadow people, that some people believe that that's what shadow people actually are, that they may be spirits or they may in fact be aliens, because sometimes shadow people do not look totally humanoid. They have exaggerated bodily features like long arms and big heads and either dark eyes or glowing eyes and stuff like that.
I think kind of the perfect example of that was the documentary we saw on Amazon, which was Mr. No Face or Sir No Face.
Yes.
And they actually, the footage that they caught has actually been investigated or looked at by professionals, and they say that there's no way that they could have ever faked it. But at the very end of this documentary, they catch this, and it gives me chills just talking about it. They catch this form that peeks around the corner, but it's not human, and it's just, it's such a weird shape, and it doesn't have a human movement to it as it peeks around the corner. And when they did the size comparison between one of the guys that was there at the investigation and it was actually very small.
Right.
And when you watch the video, to me it looked like it was like 8 feet tall, but when they actually went back and did side by side, this thing was like 3 feet, I think they said.
Something like that. It was really small. And oftentimes that's, more often than not anyway, usually when somebody tells their story of a sighting of a gray alien, they're usually quite short.
Yeah. And the Sir No Face documentary is a ghost investigation, so it has nothing to do with aliens. But after watching it and then kind of, I guess, doing research and other things that we've watched, I'm starting to actually shift my opinion from ghosts to possible extraterrestrial. And I'm not 100% because, like I said, I am a complete skeptic, but what they caught on camera was nothing I've ever seen before.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah, it was strange. It was humanoid, but it was small, and it did not move in a human fashion as it peeked around that door, that corner, behind the door, and it literally it didn't have a face.
It was like its body was made of jello. That's the only way that I can explain it. Like no bones.
Yeah.
It was just weird.
And that's like how with a lot of the sightings that have been reported by people, a lot of it goes into that. That's sort of, I don't want to say shape-shifting, but almost like appearing and disappearing. Like there's some sort of technology that they have to be able to be around us and not be seen or be detected unless it's accidental or, they want you to see them. And
right.
That sort of thing. Because a lot of people have actually reported that it's like they feel that there's something there, but they can't see it. But then other times they do. Or even if you go to like, they did a really good explanation, I guess you can say, in the movie The Fourth Kind, that goes back also to other reports by people, as well as the book Communion by Whitley Strieber, where a lot of people have reported waking up and thinking there was an owl in their room.
Right.
Or that there's an owl sitting in their window looking at them. Yeah, and it's like your mind is trying to take in what it's seeing, and the symbol that it puts with it is an owl because it's a small, kind of strangely shaped creature with big eyes.
Right.
And so that's always been related to an alien abduction or an alien encounter, is people waking up with this memory of an owl being in their room or an owl looking in their window or something.
Right.
And it gives me chills.
Yeah, me
because
too.
That was the same thing when I was a kid, when I was not with owls, because, owls are sort of something I connect with anyway on a sort of a spiritual, personal totem sort of level. But at my grandmother's house, looking out the window at night as I'm going to sleep and seeing like shadow figures with like, big eyes or glowing eyes. And that was one of the things that I saw a lot up in the Midwest when I was a kid that used to terrify me. It wasn't just at her house, but it was predominantly at her house.
Right.
So.
Well, and obviously she felt like there was something there.
Yeah, she felt the same things a lot. Even my dad, who really did and didn't believe in a lot of stuff, I remember him having stayed over there in a pull-out couch and waking up in the middle of the night, like freaking out, because he said he woke up because he felt a cold hand grab his foot that was out of the covers, and it woke him up. It like grabbed his foot, and it felt like it was an ice cold dead hand.
No, that's why you don't leave your feet out from under the covers. I mean, everybody knows that.
Oh, well, yeah, everybody.
That's how the demons get you.
Never look under the bed.
Nope.
Because who may be hiding there?
Demons.
I thought you were going to say Michael Keaton. I left it open. But
you said well, you said Michael Keaton this time, so
okay.
Well done, sir.
So that's, I mean, it is such a vast topic. There are different types, I guess you can say, of aliens, different species. Like we have the Greys, that is kind of symbolic. When you think aliens, you think of Greys, and Greys are those sort of androgynous, nondescript sort of beings that usually have disproportionate body sizes to their limbs. Usually they're pictured as having longer arms, they're shorter. Some people say that it's actually a suit that they're wearing, and that's what is being seen, is some sort of like tight suit that's covering up their actual body. They have bigger heads, and they have really large, usually almond-shaped eyes. So those are the Greys. And then you have what some people refer to as the Nordic aliens, which basically look just like humans. But they're very tall, and they're very pale, and they have blonde hair.
I was going to say, and they're very beautiful. They're very attractive. Yeah.
So some people theorize that those are actually possibly a form of hybrids between humans and aliens, or maybe even...
That's what they're up there doing with us.
Maybe, we're the hybrids from them or something. So, and then, of course, the idea that we have of lizard people actually comes from aliens, because people have cited aliens that look like lizards. They have scaly skin and lizard-like pupils and eyes and very nondescript tiny mouths, sort of like lizards.
Yeah,
sometimes
Mark
beak-like.
Zuckerberg.
Yes, and all of our politicians and royalty.
Yes.
And so those are the main ones. And then there are some that are completely amorphous, that really don't have any sort of definite shape, that are like sort of gelatinous almost, that they can kind of take whatever shape they want, but they're never really seen as being something that's really even humanoid. They're kind of blob-like. They can be elongated, or they can be sort of rounded and whatever. So
I feel like if we were ever invaded, I really hope that it's by aliens like on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. That's what I'm going for.
The Moonanites?
Yes.
The 8-bit creatures that just are sarcastic about everything.
And then the German one, and then the other one.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm pulling for a Nick Knock.
And see, that brings up a whole other idea too. The idea that people have of, well, if there are extraterrestrials, if there are aliens, things not of the planet Earth. And that's where I kind of go beyond being a skeptic, because I believe that there is a high probability that we are not the only functioning, evolved sort of life form in this universe, because we barely scratched the surface of even our own solar system.
All I have to say about that is, like, if aliens were thinking about coming down here and they've just been kind of investigating, I would just blow this place up, because nobody gets along with anybody, and God forbid if aliens actually came down, we're like, hey guys, how's it going? I'm almost positive we would blow them up, or attempt to.
And see, that's why I think, honestly, one of the reasons why I believe that they probably already have. I mean, I honestly believe that they've been coming here for a long time, because we have so many, I don't know how to put it. We have so many legends. We have anecdotal evidence, like sightings from people throughout history. We have medieval artwork, which you refer to as the original memes.
Right.
Like the religious artwork of, with the Holy Family, and there's a guy off in the background pointing up at the sky, and there's some people have said, well, that's really just supposed to be, like the Christmas star. But if you look at it, it's really a ship of some sort.
And see, I just really feel as though, like, a sense of humor wasn't recently invented. Like,
no,
especially me. If I had been a painter back then, you better bet I'd be fucking with some people and throwing some weird shit in.
But what I'm I know you would. But the idea is, like, all these cultures have something beyond, and I'm not even going onto a religious aspect. I'm saying that all these things that have started religions, I guess you can even say, have some sort of connection to something beyond our planet that is not necessarily like a spiritual, godlike thing. That even, like, one of the oldest religions that exists within, which is Hinduism, the Mahabharata, and the epic battle, that the whole idea is based around, that goes into great detail about these things flying through the sky that are thunderous and literally like shooting fireballs down and taking out entire cities at a time and stuff. And this is something that's 5,000 years old, and they've associated it with these are gods, things like that. So they put their own interpretation of it. Or within Christianity, the book of Ezekiel talks about him looking up in the sky and seeing, he describes it as wheels and wheels within wheels spinning in the sky. And, these creatures that have a face on every side of the head, and the ability to destroy entire nations and stuff. And even like the idea of Sodom and Gomorrah, whether it be a natural cataclysm or it could be something extraterrestrial destroying a city. And they put their own spin on it, saying, well, it's because, at first the story was that these angels came to the city, and they were brought into people's homes, and then this city, so to speak, was deemed to be ungodly, so it was destroyed with fire and brimstone. And, Lot and his wife, the whole don't turn back and look, and she did, or whatever, and then the pillar of salt. So there's lots of correlations that have been given a religious spin, maybe just because people didn't understand them. And so they're like, okay, well, this is a work of God or something, and, not a God that I would want to associate with, obviously, but
right.
You know what I mean? That there's all these different connections and all these cultures that started like that. So, I don't know. That's where it gets me, because I look beyond, like, okay, the theology side of it, and it's just like, if somebody experienced something like that in a time where they really didn't have technology, how would they describe it? Yeah,
that's true. I mean, you don't even have to, you can have technology, and when you see something you've never seen before, you always question it, and you don't know where it came from, or anything like that.
Exactly.
So So you're more of a believer in aliens over time travel?
I think they can kind of go hand in hand, honestly, because I believe if there's a technology that an extraterrestrial civilization already has that allows it to be able to, for one, just come to our planet, and maybe have been doing it for millennia, and secondly, they come to our planet from a place that we don't even know about, and they can be here with the ability to be undetected while they're here, then the idea of time itself is a construct that we've kind of created within our own dimensional understanding, because time as we know it is based around our Earth revolving around the sun and the gravity on our planet.
Right.
You move out of our solar system, or you even move to a different planet in our solar system. You go to Mercury, and 1 year is 88 Earth days.
Right.
So the farther you get away from the center of our solar system, the longer that cycle becomes for each planet.
Right.
The larger the planet is, the denser the gravity is. So all those things actually affect what we call time. And the whole idea, too, that the further away you get from a planetary mass, or like a sun that is causing that density mass, that gravitational pull.
Yeah.
There is a theory that if you leave our solar system, the further you get away from something that can affect gravity, like a star, like our sun, you leave our solar system, the theory goes, if you get far enough away from our solar system and you spend, say, 20 years way, way far away from these gravitational forces, and then you come back to our planet 20 years after leaving, that the time on our planet could have elapsed 1,000 years, but you've only aged 20 just because you don't have those effects. And there's whole theories with that, with, the different paradoxes of twins, one staying on the planet and one going in space, that when they come back, they've actually aged at a different molecular rate, and all sorts of things like that. I think it was called the Hawking's paradox with the twins, because he's the one that really kind of spelled it out, Stephen Hawking. So, if they've got the ability to do interstellar travel, and it's not taking them 1,000 years to travel great distances, but it's only taking them, a certain amount of time, obviously they've got the technology to understand, to manipulate and control something like, say, a wormhole, which we've only recently started looking into scientifically.
Right.
That's time travel in itself.
That's true. We just don't know where the other end is.
Yeah. Because we've always been like, okay, well, the closer we go to the speed of light, the harder it is for us actually to exist as we're traveling, because we don't have the ability to do that. Our bodies become so dense that it's not possible for us to get that fast. So if they have a different method of sort of manipulating space-time, say like the idea of warp drives or light speed travel, in science fiction, it rings true, because they're actually manipulating the fabric of space-time, like tesseracts, folds in space-time and stuff.
Right.
So who knows?
I think I could be more understanding of time travel over aliens, but I don't know. The more we sit here and talk, and the more I think about, things that I've actually encountered, I guess, I'm like, well, maybe I'm not as much of a skeptic as I thought I was. I don't know.
I think it's like the whole cliche idea of aliens and the way we look at it as a society, and some of the people.
See, and that's the thing, because I just think of like the nutty, crazy alien people.
Yeah. And I've met some people like that, and I met some people that you would not even have any idea, and they totally believe that things have happened to them,
right.
Or they've had sightings, or some of them's been abducted. I've had evidence given to me when I was doing stuff with MUFON that was completely laughable. People submitting pictures that were really nothing more than just stars in their backyard and saying, look at this one, it's moving. And I'm like, no, it's really not. You're moving the camera. It's obvious.
Right.
Or there was this one I remember that somebody sent me that was a picture. I was out at a swamp and there was something strange in the sky in their picture. And I'm like, well, if you look at what's strange in the sky, it's actually because you tried to badly Photoshop. Or maybe you didn't even try to badly Photoshop. Maybe it's just you did a double exposure. It was literally a sunken tire in the swamp that was also seen up in the sky, and they couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, well, it's if you look down further in the picture, you can see that same exact thing mirrored sitting there in the water. So it's not something in the sky. It's an artifact.
It sounds like a double exposure. Yeah.
So, I mean, and people have no clue. And it's the same thing with paranormal. It really is. There are people that have taken pictures and are convinced that it's something, even when I've done my tours. And they'll show me pictures that they've taken on the tour. And they're like, look at this. This is like an orb. And you can see it like with a video or a picture, it's moving. And I'm like, well, no, because if you look at how you're aiming your camera, you have a street light in the background, and
lens
as you're
flare.
moving it, it's a lens flare. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, then I describe it, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. So,
and we were actually watching an episode of Night Shift the other day where we actually caught an orb in one of the episodes.
Yeah,
and it was the strangest thing, and we were both discussing on whether it was an actual thing, because they had made a comment in earlier episodes about the break room being haunted.
Right.
And then I think within like a couple episodes, we actually saw an orb going over two of the actors, and we were like, is this going to play into something? But I mean, we're almost finished with the whole entire season, and they haven't even brought it up again.
Because we thought it was a special effect that they were putting in, kind of like a hat tip to that, leading in or foreshadowing into another future thing about it.
But it has not.
Yeah, and there was no lens flare. There was not even a light that was there. Even the set lights, they're very specific about cameras when they're filming stuff. Not to have reflections and lens flares unless it's on purpose.
And I feel like when they were editing, they would have removed it if it was lens flare, which it wasn't.
Yeah. And that's a whole other thing, too, even with orbs within the paranormal. If they're spirits or if they're dust or insects. And some people believe that orbs are actually, there is a whole, what do you want to call it? Like a thought, a field, like a theory that orbs are not even spirits at all. It's actually a form of something that aliens are using interdimensionally to come back and forth. There is like a whole school of thought on the fact that orbs are really just alien technology. So there's, a lot of people that rely too much on orbs, and everything is an orb, everything is a spirit, when a lot of times it's dust, a lot of times it's an insect. So even when I get pictures of them, I really am very, I'm not saying skeptical, I'm very thorough in taking lots of pictures and comparing all the pictures before and after something I get an orb in to see if it moves, how it moves, what it looks like, because I don't just automatically say it's an orb, therefore it's a spirit.
Right.
Because I'm doing a paranormal investigation. But then again, I also don't automatically discount an actual orb and say, well, no, that's just a piece of dust.
Right.
Because
well, there's a very
be.
distinct difference between them, and you really have to pay attention to it.
Yes.
Not everything is a ghost, and not everything is an alien.
Yeah,
and not everything
that's
is
true.
Bigfoot.
There was... Oh, you going to say something?
I was going to say, when we do have a Bigfoot conversation one of these days, I do actually have a Bigfoot story.
Okay. Yes. And that's one I'm waiting for you to talk about, because I like that story. Yes. And that's, I'm not even going to get into Bigfoot with this one, because that's not the topic, but because I was almost going to go on a tangent there too. But you know, that's a thing too. A lot of, like, even cryptids sometimes, not necessarily Bigfoot, but some cryptid creatures, as they fall into the paranormal field as a whole, a lot of them kind of cross over that line that they could be actually an alien creature too, depending on what it is. So, and whole mythos like H.P. Lovecraft, even though it is science fiction, the idea that some people have or believe that these ideas that we get for science fiction is some sort of Jungian collective memory that we have, and that's why we come up with these ideas that are shared for different cultures.
See, now I can get down with that.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
And there are even things, and that goes back to like the idea of tulpas. Enough people believe in something that it can actually manifest itself as being something, perhaps.
Right.
And a number of years ago, and you can go on like YouTube and look this up, there was a sound that Noah, I believe, originally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was originally Noah that had found it. Noah, the the weather people, not Noah's Ark, but NOAA. And then corroborated with research by NASA also, that somewhere in the South Pacific, they detected a sound, and they did not know what it was. They were theorizing that it could be a shifting of tectonic plates underwater or something like that. But go on YouTube and look it up, the Cthulhu sound, because it actually originated from the same region in the South Pacific that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about, saying that was the location where Cthulhu actually lies sleeping under the ocean waiting to awaken.
Totally did not know that.
Yeah.
That is such a cool little thing.
It is the same geographical place on the planet that the mythos relating around Cthulhu and this great sleeping monster the size of a mountain that will one day wake up and destroy the world.
I wish he just would. We need a do-over.
We need a do-over.
I don't think we can go without me talking about my boyfriend from Ancient Aliens.
Crazy Hair Man?
I love that dude.
Tsukakalakamuk? I don't even know.
Yiannopoulos, something I don't know. But that dude is just, he is probably my favorite alien investigator, aside from Dan Aykroyd.
And wasn't he the one that normally when he's on camera, he's sitting in his underwear, but you don't see that?
Correct.
Was it him?
Yeah. There is a rumor going around that every interview you see of him on the History Channel, he's wearing his suit and tie and his boxers. And that alone makes me love him.
Being who he is, and I've seen him outside of the Alien shows, we've watched things with him, like in other shows, I would not put it past him. He's a very interesting fellow.
I mean, we sit here and do all of our podcasts in our pajamas, so, I mean, why not?
But we can. It's a podcast.
That's true.
No one's saying it.
Nobody wants to see this.
No. We have our dogs lying here asleep next to us.
Snoring and farting.
And we're sitting here in our pajamas talking about aliens. And we know we don't live out in the middle of nowhere in a trailer park and, that sort of crazy persona of what a lot of like paranormal people, especially alien believers or disbelievers, whatever, abduction people, it's comfortable. So
yeah.
So I mean, we didn't really have like a timeline or like an outline of how we wanted to go about this. It was just sort of like, these are our thoughts, and I think this could open up into whole other episodes where we specialize in talking about a certain aspect of this.
Right.
If people are interested in that, definitely come onto our Facebook page, Westgate Paranormal, and comment. And, you don't necessarily have to leave us a private message. Just leave us a public comment, and tell us what you're interested in.
Let us know that you're listening.
Yeah, we would like it to be a public discussion and know, what you're interested in for us to actually go and research, because we have a lot of fun just researching. That's like a whole big part of it. Everything we do within the paranormal community, there's more research involved than there is actually investigating, I believe.
And we would love to do live podcasts where you guys can, call and write and have questions for us, but we can't do that if we don't know if anybody's listening.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, our podcast is getting listened to. I checked the stats. We are getting lots of listens on this podcast. It's on all the platforms, basically, at this point. I can't honestly say yet with iHeartRadio, because that's a long sort of vetting thing with them for them to approve or disapprove podcasts. That's the only platform that I'm not really sure about yet. So because I haven't got a verification back from them after submitting our podcasts, but it's on everything else as far as Google Play and iTunes, and all that stuff. And it even, the platform that I use to produce these podcasts is Spreaker. And so they will actually take and redistribute it through YouTube as well. So even on my YouTube channel, you can go and find this podcast on my YouTube channel. So obviously it's just all audio. So the more people who are listening to this, if you come to our Facebook page and you leave us public comments, we respond as soon as we see them, and it gives us ideas. It lets us know that y'all are listening and what you are interested in us talking to, and that really gives us a little bit more incentive also to do live podcasts, so we can interact with you live through Spreaker online, and be able to comment back and forth to you and answer your questions in real time instead of us just doing pre-recorded podcasts like this.
Right. We want to interact with you guys, and we are very active on our Facebook and on our Instagram. So if you guys have a question, if you have a comment, write us, because we will respond.
Yes, most definitely. Instagram, we are Westgate Paranormal. And Facebook, we are also, you go to facebook.com/Westgate Paranormal. Basically, anywhere you see Westgate Paranormal, you're seeing us.
Exactly. And we're thinking about doing something as incentive for you guys coming on and following us and liking us and commenting, and I'll let Eric talk about that.
Right. So this is going to be a contest. It's basically going to be a raffle of sorts. We're kind of working out how exactly we want to do it, as far as a raffle where you can buy an inexpensive entry, say for like $1 or $2 or something like that, or a raffle giveaway based upon followers. And my first thing that I'm really looking at raffling off is going to be a PSB7 spirit box. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, just Google SB7 Spirit Box. Go on YouTube and look it up. What it is what one of the methods that we use during paranormal investigations for actually contacting spirits. It is something that Gary Galka had invented, whatever you want to call it, based upon older radio technologies. And we talk about this in our ITC and EVP podcast, that it is a radio that scans lots of frequencies very fast. It has white noise built into it to help actually bring out those EVPs, the actual recordings of the spirits themselves, and it's a method that we use to contact and get responses. So it's an SB7 spirit box. They run about $60 brand new, just the box themselves without a speaker. And what I'd be doing is actually giving away the SB7 and a speaker with it. Speaker to be determined. I can't really say what speaker I'm going to include with it. This is all going to be based upon how many followers we get on our Instagram and Facebook, how much input we get of people who are interested in getting one of these, either for doing your own use test experiments with it at your house or on investigations or whatever. They work awesome. You can see them in just about any ghost hunting show. They use an SB7, and it looks like a small pocket-sized radio, basically, that scans really fast through all the frequencies with white noise built in, so that you can get words in responses to the questions you're asking, instead of just having a recorder and talking into the air, so to speak, and going back and listen to the recording later. It's real-time communication with spirits. So
Right. And I think we'll probably actually start doing, giving you guys updates for people who are in the North Florida, South Georgia area. We will start giving you guys updates, and if we start traveling further, we'll give you those updates too. But Ryan Dunn with Afterlife Tours is about to do an investigation on October 14th at Moon River Brewery. It is an open investigation. He only has a limited number of tickets that he is selling. If you are interested in that, you can either go onto Facebook to Afterlife Tours, and you can get the information of contacting him through there.
right, I think with Facebook, it's 3D Ghosts, so it's actually the Savannah Ghost Research Society. Ryan Dunn is the founder of the Savannah Ghost Research Society in Savannah, Georgia. So facebook.com/3D Ghosts. And then online, their website is afterlifetours.net.
Right, and he is doing a public investigation. It's a 6-hour lock-in. It's $100, but if you guys have any questions about that, you can also message us on Facebook, and we will give you the information if you would like to be there with us doing that investigation with Ryan.
And those tours, those overnight investigations there are pretty awesome, because there are other groups that go into some of these places, but with Ryan, you get access that no one else in the public gets.
Right.
There are parts of that building, the upstairs, several floors upstairs, that are completely closed off from the public, and also the basement and everything. And during his overnights, it's actually arranged that we get full access to the entire building.
Right, right. And I love doing the Moon River investigation. That was my first investigation, and every chance I get, I would love to investigate every time. It never gets boring.
Right. It is an awesome place. And we've gotten, just with using minimal equipment, we always get evidence there.
Right, yeah.
I've got full apparitions as I'm standing there coming around me.
Mm-hmm.
That I've got the video of that on my YouTube channel too. It's great. And it's also a place that, like, Zach Bagans and TAPS, so, Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters both have
BuzzFeed
investigated.
Unsolved.
BuzzFeed Unsolved, right. And on top of that, also, Ryan Dunn is also going to be opening up his tours, the Afterlife tours that he does now in Savannah, Georgia. He is also going to be opening up those tours in St. Augustine, Florida. Right now, the time frame, I believe, is looking around the beginning of October at some point. He's already basically got all the investigations done in St. Augustine of the places that are going to be on the tours. The way he does his tours are unlike any other tour company, because a lot of the ghost tours, especially in St. Augustine, and I know Savannah's like that too, any city that has those ghost tours, a lot of them are a lot of local urban legends, things like that. It's very theatrical, and there are a lot of tours that are very theatrical in both Savannah and St. Augustine, especially with certain companies that I'm not going to mention the names, that ride around in trolleys and wear costumes and stuff, and a lot of it is just totally made up. They're fun tours,
Absolutely,
but they're just made up stories.
Right.
They're meant to, like, scare you, and it's kind of like a Halloween ride all year long. But the way he does his walking ghost tours is he actually goes to the places. He spends a lot of time in the research libraries investigating the history of each of the places he's investigating. And during the tour itself, he actually presents the actual history of each location that he takes the person to, and he also lets you see and hear actual investigative evidence from each of those places on the tour that he personally and his team has investigated overnight. So you're actually hearing the actual EVPs from the places. He gets the death certificates of the people that are associated with those haunts that live there, the history of the building, history of the land. Yeah, everything.
Yeah, it's super cool. He just does such a great job.
Yes, it is. It is unlike any other tour that you've ever been on. That it is all, he walks around with a tablet with speakers, with pictures, with everything.
Even if you're not into the paranormal, if you are interested in, if you're just a history buff, super cool tour just for history alone.
Yes. And that's the thing with me when I'm doing my tours in St. Augustine. I believe that, like, anything that I'm talking about as far as, like, the paranormal is associated with it, it plays into that history. The history is what makes what's happening happen, so to speak, because it's the history that leads into that.
Right.
So it's a big part of it. So we have a puppy here, our dog, that's getting annoyed at something and starting to growl. We've already gone an hour and 15 minutes into this podcast.
Woohoo!
So I think it's time we just go ahead and wrap it up. I think that's our cue at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, please come check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Like, comment, follow us. The more followers we have, the more likely we are to actually do that raffle for that spirit box, which we really want to do.
Yeah, we really do. We want to start doing things, more contests, raffles, things like that. It's not just us talking. We want it to be more interactive.
And we want you guys to be interactive, and we want you guys to go out and be interactive if it's what you're interested in.
Yes. So share us, listen to us, find us online, Westgate Paranormal. We'd love to hear from you. And we're really looking forward to many more. Yes, we hear you.
We know you're grumpy.
Many more podcasts coming in the future, and
absolutely,
and more show ideas that we get from y'all. So let us know what you want.
Yeah, we really do. We really want to hear from you guys. So come say hi, or leave a question, or hey, give us an episode idea.
Yes.
We would love that, because, you know, we kind of run out of ideas after a little while, but we can sit here and babble for hours.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if you want to listen to us babble, that's fine, but we'd really enjoy a topic.
So until next time, thank you all for tuning in. Please share our podcast. Come check us out. Comment, like, follow, all that good stuff. And y'all take care of yourself. If you go out investigating, whatever, please be careful. Make sure you're safe wherever you go. Don't go alone. And until next time,
y'all have a good day.
See you later.